Welcome to the Salk Institute's Where Cures Begin podcast, where scientists talk about breakthrough discoveries with your hosts Ali Akmal and Brittany Fair.
I'm here today with Dr. Joanne Chory. She is among the world leaders in the study of plant responses to changes in their environment, including climate change. She has pioneered the use of molecular genetics to study how plants alter their size, shape, and form to optimize growth and photosynthesis for particular environments. Chory's prolific research career has had a huge impact on the field of plant biology. She is now stepping into a new phase of research, one that she is excited to talk about on our show today. In recent years, Dr. Chory has also won numerous awards, including the Breakthrough Prize, despite having Parkinson's disease, which is a neurodegenerative disease that primarily affects a person's ability to move. So you may hear her tapping or sounding a little breathless during this podcast. Dr. Chory, welcome to Where Cures Begin.
Hi, Brittany.
Hi. So let's start with a very basic question. What is the difference between a botanist, a plant biologist, and a plant geneticist?
So for me, a botanist is someone who knows a lot about all the species of plants that are out there in the nature, you know. And so I wouldn't call myself a botanist.
Okay.
Because I know insides of plants better than outsides, you know what I mean? So if I bust open a plant and take out the DNA, I can relate to the genes, but I don't really know if it's a Melaleuca tree or a California wild oak. So anyway, but I would call myself overall a plant geneticist, I think, because that's really what drives the project and what has driven the projects in my lab over the last 30 years. You know, it's a genetic approach.
And what do you mean by a genetic approach?
So what a genetic approach does is it allows you to take away the function of, say, one gene out of the 30,000 genes that plant has. And then what went wrong when you took that gene away, right?
Okay, so you're basically taking away one gene at a time and seeing how that affects the plant in order to deduce the function of the gene.
Yeah, that's right.
So how did you become interested in studying plant biology and plant genetics?
Well, I did my PhD in microbiology. I worked in bacteria. And I was at the University of Illinois, and they had this great bacteriology department where people worked on all these, you know, different kinds of wild bacteria. But when I was graduating, I wanted to, do a more sophisticated organism, you know. And so I was like, what are the good models? Well, maybe plants would be kind of interesting, you know. And so the plants were just starting to make the big time in 1983. But the idea was that I could really make an impact if I worked on plants. I go, these people know nothing about how that plant is growing, you know. And I liked the lab I picked, which is Fred Osabel's lab. The reason why I liked him is because, you know, he sat me in his office and he told me all the people he had trained and how well they were doing with it, you know, what they were working on. And he seemed like really proud of the people he had trained. And I thought, what a great mentor, you know.
Wow. And what type of plants did you work on in his lab?
I worked on this plant called the Arabidopsis thaliana, which I still work on, and it's all 31 years later.
And what have you discovered over the past 35 years by studying this small mustard plant?
I think the biggest result of my career, really, was the fact that we discovered that plants actually make steroid hormones, and they use these steroid hormones the way animals do. And that is, you know, to buff themselves out and get big and strong, you know. So we're like, all right, that's pretty cool, you know. So I got us a nice paper in Science or whatever.
And how does this knowledge help you alter or change plants?
Yeah, so that knowledge tells us that we can make a plant any size.
You're clearly very passionate about your work. What is your favorite part about being a scientist?
I just love having a new discovery, you know. You know, some graduate students come in, they're pretty mature, and they can do stuff, you know, and they get results along. But most graduate students are not really at that place in life yet, you know. And so if they stay in the game and have a little grit, you know, they often get a really good result. And so when you see that, it just makes it all worthwhile, right?
you are now leading Salk's Harnessing Plants Initiative, this huge initiative. And what problem is the initiative trying to solve?
Well, I think the short answer is we're trying to help the planet get over this climate change crisis that we're in. And we think plants can play a role, and that is the fact that they can suck up a greenhouse gas called CO2, carbon dioxide. But I believe that global warming is causing climate change. And climate change is going to cause a lot of disruptions into human life as we know it. And I just feel like, we spend 30 years understanding how plants grow, and all that growth is really related to photosynthesis. And photosynthesis is the process by which plants suck up the CO2 from the atmosphere, and they add a little water, and then they use sunlight to split that water and make oxygen. And that's how animals evolved, because we need oxygen. Plant biology has largely been ignored, which is a big mistake.
Why do you think plant biology has been ignored?
It's because plants are so different than us. I think that their whole life strategy is so different from the human life strategy. People just don't relate, an embryo becomes a fetus and then it becomes a human. But, for a plant, the seed is what becomes the next plant, right? It's totally different, It's not growing in the mother's body or anything, It just blows away and then finds a spot where it looks like the sunlight's okay, and then it pops up and then off it goes, right? And so that's really different. But evolution for plants is really different too. But plants came plants have had a lot more time to evolve than people, right? Because human life is only like 50,000 years old. But, even sophisticated flowering plants have been around for about 500 million years. And photosynthesis as a process in microbes has been around for over 4 billion. So they had a lot of time to evolve. So these organisms are really good at what they do, right? Sucking up CO2. And so, when people say they want to build these big machines to suck up CO2, I go like, why? You have plants growing all over the planet, and they all have adapted to the place they're growing. And so why not just let them do it, right? And so we figured, but you can't just let plants do it the way they are doing it now, because there's not enough land to feed 10 or 11 billion people by the end of the century, and at the same time, keep all that CO2 out of the atmosphere.
The Salk Institute's Harnessing Plants Initiative can help draw down and store more carbon in order to help mitigate the disastrous effects of climate change while providing more food, fuel, and fiber for a growing population.
The latest IPCC report, this is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, right? Said, 2030, we're not going back to where the Earth used to be. We have 10 years, so there's an urgency there. All the ice is going away, and that ice is gone. No one's really quite sure what's going to happen, but they think the temperature is going to go up by 5 degrees, and if it goes up by 5 degrees Celsius, the ocean's going to rise by more than 2 meters. That's more than a 6-foot-tall man. And so if that happens, a lot of the coast is going to be ruined, because we've already kind of imposed ourselves on the coastlines anyway. And they're not really protecting and making land the way they used to, because people are all living there. We're going to try to do this, what we want to do in our initiative, because we think there's a hope. So I have a wake-up call for, anybody out there who thinks they're working in an area related to climate change. But we have to also draw down some of the CO2 we've already put up there. And the only way to do that I can see is by capturing CO2, and plants are going to do it way better than any machine. And people will say, what can I do? Should I drive an electric car? Well, you can drive an electric car. That's a nice idea. But I can tell you this fact, if every car in the United States became an electric car today, it's not making a global impact on the amount of CO2 we put up. So it's still, you still have to just suck it out of there somehow. And the only way I can see of doing it is by having a number of different approaches that involve nature and humans acting together. Governments will have to make a choice. Do we let the world heat up, or do we feed them? Do we feed all these people, right? And so we're hoping that our plants will be enough better that, having a positive impact on yields. And then also, it can draw down some of the CO2 that's making us heat. The planet is heating at a rate that's way too fast. It's unprecedented. You don't see anything in the fossil record that says the planet has heated that fast. And so there's already been extinction of over half the species on Earth because of global warming, and these weather extremes that you get.
You recently spoke for a TED Talk, which now has over 1 million views.
I recently had an epiphany. I realized that I could actually play a role in solving one of the biggest problems that faces mankind today, and that is the problem of climate change. I had Parkinson's for the last 15 years, and this gives me a sense of urgency that I want to do this now while I feel good enough to really...
Can you share a little bit about that and how that's impacted this work?
Yeah. It gives me more of a sense of urgency, I think, and also I live for the day a lot more than I used to, I think. Because I don't know when I wake up how I'm going to feel, right? So I might have a good day, I might have a bad day, And you have to kind of go with the flow. And so it also teaches you humility. I'm always walking around, looking like I need help. And so everyone at Salk has been great, It's a wonderful family for me in that sense. But, my own family has had an impact, Because, when your kids are little, they don't know how you're going to feel when you wake up. That's not good. And so I did my best to hide it all from them until I got older. But now my symptoms are bad enough. I just can't hide them anymore. Those are the kinds of things you have to learn when you get a chronic disease, that has an impact visually on people, because you see people looking at you weird. You have to get used to that idea. I think sometimes people think I'm drunk or something, I'm all breathy like I've been this whole podcast, and then I'm talking away, and then my hands are moving all around. And so you just have to laugh at yourself. So I've learned a lot from having this disease. I've learned it's not really good to have a life plan that goes on for 50 years, I always was like that, though, and so I'm just even more like that now, I think. But, a lot of people have their life plan, when you're 20, you think you can dictate everything, I'm going to have my first child when I'm 27, it's going to be a girl, and she's going to be really nice or whatever, and you go that might not happen, I've talked to a lot of young graduate students because, I get asked to do seminars about what it takes to be a successful woman scientist, Everybody wants to hear about that. And I say, well, you have to first define success for yourself. What's going to make you happy, right? And so once you do that, then I think it becomes more obvious how you get there. For different people, it's going to be different things. And so for me, it was always my students, I think, and postdocs. I really wanted them to do well, and my kids too, And so I have kids late in life, but I always tell my lab, you prepared me well for my kids. My lab never calls me up unless they need something as well as my kids, And so it's okay, you guys are all the same. But anyways, but I think, it's been fun. Overall, I do have a sense of urgency because, Parkinson's is a disease of aging. And so, I'm 64, but I feel like I'm 85, Some days it's just really hard. It's the science prepares you well for life, I guess, because you have to try to find solutions, And you have to... you have to do it in a way that is looking for the truth, not just looking for an answer.
Did you ever consider another career besides being a scientist?
Yeah, I came to science late. I was like absorbing, Russian novels and stuff like that.
Oh.
And so, did I think of doing something else? I don't know if I had another plan, but it wasn't necessarily science, you know what I mean? I was open to anything when I went to college. I think, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But if I could do anything now, what would it be? I don't know, be a really good athlete. That's something I know is impossible for me to be right now. But anyway, that might be fun, just to be coordinated for a day. I'll take that.
Do you have any advice for aspiring scientists who are interested in plant biology or plant genetics?
You pick an advisor that can remember the humility of their own experience in the lab. I think as an advisor, if you really see there's a spark in your student, you can keep them in the game.
What do you think the future holds for plant biology?
The future for plant biology is going to be in translating what we learned during these past 30 years of our golden age into something in the field that is going to impact human life.
This has been a fascinating conversation, Dr. Chory. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and sharing with us your research and your future endeavors.
Thank you for having me.
By understanding and improving a few genetic pathways in plants, Dr. Chory's team of plant biologists believe they can help mitigate the effects of climate change by helping plants store more carbon in their root systems, thus reducing atmospheric carbon dioxide. If you're interested in learning more about Dr. Chory and her work, visit salk.edu/harnessingplants.
Join us next time for more cutting-edge Salk science. At Salk, world-renowned scientists work together to explore big, bold ideas, from cancer to Alzheimer's, aging to climate change. Where Cures Begin is a production of the Salk Institute's Office of Communications. To learn more about the research discussed today, visit salk.edu/podcast.